Hello, and welcome back to the Maple Wave, where we break down Canada's hottest stories, from political shakeups to international headlines. Today, we're diving into a fascinating territorial dispute between Canada and Denmark, a conflict that spanned almost 50 years but was recently resolved. We're talking about Hans Island, a tiny Arctic landmass that saw a rather unusual Whiskey War unfold. Buckle up, because this one's packed with diplomacy, history, and a bit of good-natured trolling. Where is Hans Island? Hans Island is a small, uninhabited rock measuring just 1.3 square kilometers. Located in the frigid Arctic waters of the Nares Strait, it sits between Canada's Ellesmere Island, in Nunavut, and Greenland, an autonomous territory of Denmark. Hans Island is about halfway between Canada and Greenland, roughly 18 kilometers from either shore. Its remote location and tiny size didn't stop it from becoming the center of an international dispute. How did the dispute start? To understand this dispute, we need to go back to 1973 when Canada and Denmark began negotiating their maritime boundaries. During these talks, the two countries agreed on most of the boundary in the Nares Strait. However, they left one critical detail unresolved: sovereignty over Hans Island. Neither country was willing to give up the tiny piece of land, leaving it in diplomatic limbo for decades. With no formal agreement, a territorial tug-of-war ensued, but in a surprisingly playful manner. The Whiskey War, a battle of bottles. By the 1980s, things took an amusing turn. Canadian and Danish military personnel would take turns visiting Hans Island to stake their claim. But instead of engaging in aggressive posturing, they swapped national flags and bottles of liquor. The Canadians would leave behind a bottle of Canadian Club whiskey with a note saying, "Welcome to Canada." The Danes would respond by planting their flag and leaving a bottle of Danish schnapps with a note that read, "Welcome to Denmark." This humorous tradition gained global attention and was dubbed the Whiskey War. While this light-hearted rivalry captured the public's imagination, serious diplomatic efforts were underway to finally put the issue to rest. Resolving the dispute, the 2022 agreement. After decades of negotiations and countless exchanged bottles, Canada and Denmark reached an agreement on June 14, 2022. The two countries decided to split Hans Island down the middle, with Canada retaining the western half and Denmark controlling the eastern half. This peaceful resolution was seen as a model for resolving international disputes without conflict. The agreement was formalized during a signing ceremony attended by Canadian and Danish officials, with both sides emphasizing the importance of diplomacy and mutual respect. Why does this matter? Now, you might be wondering, why does such a tiny, uninhabited island matter? Sovereignty and Arctic influence. Canada and Denmark both wanted to assert control over the region to strengthen their presence in the Arctic, a region rich in natural resources and of growing geopolitical significance. A model of peaceful resolution. In an era where many territorial disputes escalate into violence, the peaceful resolution of the Hans Island dispute demonstrated how diplomacy can prevail. Strengthened Canada-Denmark relations. The resolution has bolstered relations between Canada and Denmark, setting a positive example of international cooperation. With the dispute settled, Hans Island is now a symbol of peaceful diplomacy in the Arctic. While the island remains uninhabited, it may see more visitors in the future, including tourists drawn by its newfound fame. Plans to mark the island as a shared heritage site between Canada and Denmark are already in discussion. Some experts believe this peaceful resolution will pave the way for cooperation between Arctic nations on issues such as climate change and resource management. The resolution of the Hans Island dispute was met with widespread praise. Many viewed it as a diplomatic victory, showcasing how two nations can resolve differences without hostility. Social media users were quick to celebrate the quirky Whiskey War and lauded Canada and Denmark for their humorous and peaceful approach. The term Whiskey War became so iconic that several Canadian and Danish distilleries have since produced limited edition bottles to commemorate the historic event. Now, whiskey and schnapps lovers can literally taste a piece of history. The story of Hans Island isn't just about a tiny Arctic rock, it's about how countries can resolve differences with diplomacy, humor, and a spirit of cooperation. As Canada and Denmark set an example for peaceful conflict resolution, Hans Island serves as a reminder that even the smallest places can have a big impact on global diplomacy. What do you think? We'd love to hear from you. Do you think more territorial disputes should be handled like the Hans Island case? What's your take on Canada and Denmark's approach to this issue? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Maple Wave for more engaging content on Canadian news and global trends. Thanks for tuning into the Maple Wave. Until next time, stay informed and keep riding the wave of knowledge. See you in the next video.